The title of the show is Through the Gap Increasing. We were kind of thinking of something kind of like a collage of works which all have quite subtle crossovers. We're all kind of working quite a lot across the board in some kind of quite abstract connections. A few of the artists are working with language, trying to see if they can break down language or somehow perforating it, dissolving it, changing it, so as to try and make some kind of space for something else to occur outside of the kind of solid system that language is. And I think we started thinking about screen-based work at the same time because it's a similar sort of system, trying to see if we can somehow escape the boundaries of the screen or if somehow the body can pour in and out of a screen.
Earlier in the year, Bayliss asked me to join her in making a piece called Intermittent Glare. So I provided my body, and we together helped develop and conceive the piece, which was looking and dissecting frames. And since making that piece, I got to thinking about the viewer and the way work is viewed within a gallery. So the piece, figure 2, is called About Here, About Now, and it's a performance piece in which I will be positioned in 3 white squares in different parts of the exhibiting space. They are all viewing points for me, from which I will describe the space. I'm looking at what it is like to be a viewer and what it is like to be viewed.
I'm presenting a piece called Perfect 36. It's going to be staged on these platforms that you can see behind me, and it's an experiment into performance writing, so writing that's created for performance or through performance. The stage acts as a kind of mapping for the choreography that brings the text together. This forms part of a wider project I'm doing into performance writing, so each performance or presentation scenario feeds into the next. The way that I've put the text together, it's a kind of cut and paste from different sections of kind of theory or fiction or lyric, and I kind of re-edit, plagiarize, bastardize those sections and really focus on the transitions between them. So at some points they could seem like it's the same text. At some points I'm focused on there being like a real jar in between the voice and the kind of content of the work.
The piece is called Milk. It is about the relationship between the mother and the child, how they physically are in symbiosis to begin with, but then gradually they will become more and more separated. The audio is a quote by Søren Kierkegaard, which speaks about what happens when the mother weans the child. It's from the Kierkegaard text called Fear and Trembling. I really wanted to try and break the image up as I've been working with the camera sort of at the edge of its ability, and it then eventually also became to try and use the installation as a way of doing the same. So I wanted to obstruct the screen and to extend the screen space almost to make a stage where the audience both become a performer, but also they direct their way through the piece themselves in a way.
The title of the work is Explaining a Glass Surface. The work came out of a writing residency that we did together recently, where we were interested in trying to explore ways of writing in parallel with another or each other, and thinking about language as something that we build upon rather than as an act of translation.
When you're using words, you necessarily separate yourself from the thing you're talking about or describing, but we're trying to think about what it means to have to draw that line but also get back close to it as well, and I think there's maybe some parallel in what we're trying to do with the structure in the space as well as the screen of the TV.
And I think we wanted to think of this, the large frame structure as something that's close to sculpture but not quite, in the way that it might sit in the gallery, something to do with movement, how the body might move through the space.
I was trying to find a way in which I could somehow dissolve the image out of the screen. And so I started thinking about water. It seemed like the kind of obvious place to begin. I suppose it's the first time I've ever used a metaphor, but it's sort of trying to imagine a particle of water to be like a particle of an image, so that suddenly like a water molecule which can suddenly dry or suddenly combine with other molecules to become something more solid is, and then the idea of the watermark as being a kind of boundary between solid and liquid, which then is always fading and coming back again. And I was kind of trying to think about that in terms of the pixel, and more technically trying to see how I could sort of expand the video outside of the screen, but also at the same time, this kind of crosses over into the other intermittent glare work. The performer's body is actually being cut in half sometimes by the screens, but at the same time, she is sort of the thing that's holding the works together. I'm trying to think somehow you might be able to gain access into the screen. If something is coming out, perhaps there's some kind of room to go in. So I guess I'm actually using a 2D material in quite a sculptural way.